Welcome, United States Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Michael Regan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank Congresswoman Capter for those warm remarks, your leadership, your steadfast leadership. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Mayor Bradley, thank you for the warm welcome. We're glad to be here in your home city. You know, it's such an honor to join President Biden here in Lorain, Ohio, a community that embodies the promise and the potential of the bipartisan infrastructure law. At the heart of this law is an inherent understanding that protecting the environment and protecting the economy, well, they're not mutually exclusive. They actually go hand in hand. And nowhere is that more evident than when it comes to protecting the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes are a vital economic engine, an extraordinary environmental wonder, supplying drinking water for more than 40 million people, supporting nearly 1.3 million jobs, and sustaining life for thousands of species. These magnificent waters are essential to the region's way of life and to the American economy. But they require endless care, especially in the face of emerging challenges like PFAS pollution and climate change. And for many areas throughout the Great Lakes region, including right here in Lorain, the dawn of industrialization left in its wake a disastrous legacy of pollution. I'm talking about the bygone days when factories and businesses would look for the nearest river or lake to dump their waste. The Black River, right behind us, was no exception. It was once nicknamed the River of Fish Tumors because of its long history of degradation and indiscriminate dumping of industrial byproducts and polluted wastewater by industries all along the river. Thanks to the infusion of funding from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, we can now proudly celebrate its resurgence. Today, there are 25 U.S. sites throughout the Great Lakes Basin that remain areas of concern because they continue to suffer from the record level of pollution. Many of these former industrial sites have been abandoned and blighted for years, and the neighborhoods surrounding these areas and the people who live in them were also left behind. All too often, that's the case. Many of these areas include or are adjacent to communities of color, communities where poverty levels are well above average, and communities that already bear the highest burden of environmental pollution. For more than 2 decades, plans were drafted to address the contamination, but without sufficient funding to do the work. Progress has been painfully slow. An unwillingness to dedicate the necessary resources left waterfront communities, many of them underserved, reeling from the consequences. Well, I'm proud to say that that ends with the Biden administration. President Biden has made investing in our nation's waterways and water infrastructure a cornerstone of his agenda to build a better America. Thanks to the leadership of President Biden, Congresswoman Capter, and her colleagues in Congress, we're making the single largest investment in U.S. water infrastructure in American history. $50 billion will flow through EPA's highly successful water infrastructure programs. Here in Ohio, that means an investment of $242 million in infrastructure funding in this year alone, which will create roughly 3,700 jobs, with more to come. And we're going to make sure that these communities are the communities that are most in need, receive the resources as quick as possible. Those who have been shut out from government funding will now finally get the proper seat at the table. The bipartisan infrastructure law is a game changer for communities throughout the Great Lakes region and throughout the nation. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build a better America, to ensure that water infrastructure can withstand the impacts of our changing climate, to clean up the legacy toxic pollution and contaminated lands in our overburdened communities, to create a future where all of our children, regardless of the color of their skin, how much money they have in their pockets, or the zip codes that they live in can play in local rivers and streams without fear of hazard and harm, and to deliver on long overdue justice. Thanks to President Biden's leadership, we are finally going to make that vision a reality. And now it is my honor to introduce President Joe Biden.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They're all for Marcy. God love you, kiddo. You're the best. Before I began, I want to just point out I was having just sitting talking for a second with the director of HUD and a former congresswoman just on the other side of this district. And she said something that reminded me of what I miss as well. She said, "It's so good to be home in Ohio." No, I really mean it. And I said, "You're probably the only one here that understands that every time I get a chance, I go home to Delaware." You think I'm joking, I'm not. I represented Delaware for 36 years as a United States Senator. And just like most congressional districts, the good news is the bad news. Everybody knows you. Well, it's great it's great hearing you say that. It's great hearing you say that. Well, Administrator Regan, I talked him into coming out of what they consider God's country down there in the Carolina area, and he came up and took on this job. And as I said, and a proud daughter of Ohio, Secretary of Housing and Urban Affairs, Marcia Fudge, who's represented the district as well. And Mitch Landrieu, who's leading the implementation of our infrastructure. Where are you, Mitch? They don't know anybody from New Orleans down here. He used to be the mayor of New Orleans, and I called him. Mayors know how to get things done, as the mayor will tell you here. And I called him, asked him to come up, and would he be the hands-on guy to actually implement the law, implement it, get it done, and let people know how they can access it. And Brenda Malloy, chair of our Council of Economic Quality. Brenda, where are you? There you are. Thank you, Brenda. We rode up together on the aircraft together, and it's great to have you as well. I also asked to say hello from someone who you know in Lorain, but couldn't be here today. A tremendous fighter and Ohio for Ohio workers, and a guy who could easily be standing where I'm standing right now, Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown working in the Senate, keeping an eye on that other team, see what's going on. It's good to see you, Congresswoman Shontel Brown. Where are you, Shontel? I said, there you go, right in the front there. Congratulations, and it's great to have you here. And of course, Marcy Kaptur. Marcy has not only made history as the longest-serving woman in the history of the House of Representatives. Every day she's making a difference. She never, ever slows up. And she's helping this region compete, thrive, and come back. You know, that's what I want to talk a little about today. Excuse me. The historic investment we're going to make to restore the Great Lakes, strengthen the region's economy, provide clean drinking water, clean up our communities, and create good-paying jobs. A year ago, when I spoke at a joint session of the Congress, I was coming off the podium, the platform, and Marcy came up to me, and with all the press in the gallery looking down, handed me a note, a letter. And the commentators and reporters were so damn curious, what did she hand you? What's in that note? And I said, I can't tell you. No, well, if you know Marcy, you know what that letter was about. The Great Lakes. The Great Lakes. She described the treasure the Great Lakes are. They connect 8 states, 2 nations. They provide more drinking water than any set of lakes in the world, and more than 40 million people benefit from that. They support more than 1,300,000 jobs in manufacturing, tourism, transportation. warehousing, farming, and fishing, and they're essential to shipping goods made in the Midwest all across the country and around the world. Generations of families have depended on them on the boating, fishing, and hunting and swimming that they provide for everyone in this region, those who come and visit. They're home to countless natural and cultural wonders that should be conserved for all to enjoy, today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. And Marcy, by the way, I saw her tonight, she said, I got another letter for you. I don't know what the hell you got. Marcy, I promise you, I'm working like hell. But I'll read it, I promise. Whatever you say, I'll do. But Marcy's letter said, and this is why I bring it up. She said, and I quote, "The Great Lakes undergird life, work, and recreation for millions of people. And we need them. We need to invest in them if we want a brighter, more prosperous future for the region." Well, they are. They are, and we are going to. We're investing like never, ever in history. Back in 1987, an independent commission identified 43 places called areas of concern along the Great Lakes. There are areas where pollution, as EPA director said, where pollution from industry runoff, from agriculture, poor wastewater treatment, put the Great Lakes and everyone who depends on them at risk. 26 of these areas are on the United States side of the border. 12 of them are in Canada, and 5 are shared between the United States and Canada. And our mutual nations made a commitment to clean them up, to be good partners, to protect these shared treasures. And for decades, there was a lot of talk, a lot of plans, but very little progress. It was slow. That changes today. Today, we're announcing an investment of $1 billion. $1 billion from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It's going to allow the most significant restoration of the Great Lakes in the history of the Great Lakes. We're going to accelerate cleanup of sites across 6 states in the Great Lake Basin, from Duluth, Minnesota, to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Gary, Indiana, Buffalo, New York, and everywhere in between. We know these sites were dangerously polluted for decades. We're committed to clean them up. 3 decades ago, we made this commitment. And yes, we've gotten a couple of them done, like right here, like the one of my old hangouts as well. I went to Syracuse University, and I was a lifeguard on Lake Oswego, and I know the Oswego River up in New York. That was another one that's been taken care of. Now we're talking about cleaning up the Cayuga River behind the Cayuga Gorge Dam, and in the process, and it passes through Cleveland. I always mispronounce it, the Mawami River, right? Wami River in Toledo. I can say Toledo. Restoring the shoreline around the Detroit River in Michigan, the St. Louis River in Minnesota and Wisconsin, the Grand Calumet River in Indiana, and so much more. Dredging polluted sediment, restoring wetlands and habitats, making the water safer for swimming, fishing, drinking, providing habitats for wildlife and wildfowl. And the study found that every dollar we spend cleaning up the Great Lakes generates between $3 and $4 in economic benefit. That's a fact. And it's a really good investment. These are not only investments in we're making the Great Lakes. Last month, we announced over $500 million to upgrade the Soo Locks in Michigan, which connect Lake Superior and the Great Lakes. 7,000 vessels, and 90% of our country's iron ore moves through these locks every single year. That ore makes nearly all the high-strength steel that goes into U.S.-made cars and appliances. Replacing and modernizing the locks will not only create good jobs doing that, it's going to strengthen our supply chains to get goods moving faster and reduce cost. This is not the totality of what we're going to do, but it's an example of what I've said from day one. We're rebuilding America. We're going to invest in America and build a better America than we found. And for the better part of the 20th century, we used to lead the world by a significant margin because we invested in ourselves. We invested in our infrastructure, our roads, our highways, bridges, ports, airports, the arteries of the nation that allow commerce to function smoothly and move swiftly. And we invested in our people and in opportunity. We're among the first nations to provide universal high school at the turn of the 20th century. We invested to win the space race that facilitates in facilities like Lewis Research Center in Cleveland, which is now named for my buddy John Glenn, God rest his soul. And we led the world in research and development and led the creation of the internet. But somewhere along the way, we took our eye off the ball. We took our eye off the ball. Our infrastructure used to be rated #1 in the world. Today, according to the World Economic Forum, we rank number 13 in the world. China and the rest of the world is catching up and passing us. But now, with our infrastructure law, we're reinvesting in our economy and in our people, reclaiming our leadership and creating millions of jobs for building a better America. That's what we're going to do. But as we rebuild America, we're buying American and betting on American workers. This Buy America law makes the most significant investment in roads and bridges and highways in nearly 70 years through the infrastructure law, fixing as many as 1,300 bridges and nearly 5,000 miles of highway right here in Ohio that are in poor condition. If I note parenthetically, I went to visit a place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where a bridge that was well over 100 feet off the ground going over a gorge completely collapsed at 6:30 in the morning. Thank God there was only 3 vehicles on it and no one died. But had it been during rush hour, kids in school buses, there would have been numerous people that would have been killed or maimed. American workers building these roads and bridges with American-made steel is how we're going to do it. Jobs making high-speed internet affordable and available to the 14% of households in the state of Ohio that don't have the internet. We also know that Ohio has the second most lead pipes in the country. You have 650,000 lead pipes here in the state of Ohio. We're going to start undoing the legacy of lead, which has poisoned too many of the region's children. That means replacing 100% of lead water pipes and service lines and addressing what they call PFAS, a dangerous forever chemical that are a threat to the drinking water here in Ohio and other parts of America. Every American, every child should be able to turn on a faucet and know that the water they're drinking is clean and safe. We're also going to create thousands of good-paying jobs in the process with union plumbers and pipe fitters. For generations, the industries that built and defined America, steel, cars, tires, paint, all of them grew and thrived right here in Ohio. Right here on the banks of the Black River, workers built and launched 900 vessels. Freighters, tugboats, tankers, minesweepers, cruisers, built right here, were part of our arsenal of democracy in World War II. Making it in America is what this region was built on, making it in America. This region built America. It's not hyperbole. I'm not just saying that because I'm here. It's a fact. The Midwest built America, and we're building it again. Again, you've heard me say this often. You know, if Wall Street's there are a lot of good people on Wall Street. They do good things, a lot of them. Not all, but a lot of them. And guess what? The fact of the matter, Wall Street didn't build America. Ordinary middle-class people built America. And manufacturing and unions built the middle class. So, we're bringing manufacturing jobs back, taking supply chains back home from abroad so we have better jobs and lower prices. And now, instead of losing manufacturing jobs, since I came to office with the help of the congressional delegation down here, we have added 375,000 manufacturing jobs in 1 year. In 2021, we saw the highest increase in union manufacturing jobs in nearly 30 years. A couple of weeks ago, the CEO of Intel joined me and Senator Brown and Senator Portman. And by the way, I grew up in a Senate that really was bipartisan. Senator Portman played an important role in this legislation. And so at the White House, they came to see me, and the head of the Intel came. He wanted to announce at the White House $20 billion investment in semiconductor campus outside of Columbus, Ohio. Now, semiconductors are badly needed, those computer chips to manufacture automobiles, appliances, cell phones, and so much more. We invented them, but we don't make them anymore and relative to the rest of the world. It's going to create 10,000 jobs. 10,000 jobs. And by the way, 7,000 jobs constructing this massive facility and 3,000 jobs running the facility, making an average salary at that facility of $135,000 a year, blue-collar workers. Pretty good money. Manufacturing essential products that are stamped made in America. And there's more. Just a couple weeks ago, General Motors announced a $7 billion investment in Michigan to manufacture electric vehicles, creating 4,000 new quality jobs. That's on top of the announcement that I say Ford, that was General Motors. And Ford made last year an $11 billion investment in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 new jobs. 3 weeks ago in Western Pennsylvania, after I went to look at that bridge, the Union Pacific Railroad announced the largest purchase of American-made battery electric locomotives in history. And because the infrastructure law also delivers $7.5 billion to build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations all across America along our new highways. And I might add, installed by the IBEW. Last week, a company called Tritium announced a new manufacturing facility in Lebanon, Tennessee to build 30,000 electric vehicle charging stations per year using American iron and American steel and American workers, creating 500 new permanent jobs in Tennessee. We're seeing a drumbeat of good-paying jobs unlike anything we've seen in our history. But not only that, with these announcements, we're also showing that growing the economy and creating jobs can go hand in hand with protecting the environment, not decimating it, meeting the moment on climate change. Like our program to clean up abandoned mines and cap and plug orphaned oil and gas wells, sweeping and spewing methane into the air. Thousands of those wells and mines are right here in the Ohio River Valley, here in the Ohio, and they're going to get paid the same amount capping them as it costs to dig them and create those. And they're, again, good union jobs. And as good as these jobs are, folks digging those wells are proud what they're about to do because now they're going to cap them. The infrastructure law also helps us invest in cleaner, stronger, more resilient electric grid with 100% clean electric energy being generated by the year 2035. And some of those utility poles and transformers are going to be installed by machines that are right here at a place like Skylift. You know, all of this is going to do is create more good-paying jobs and make us more globally competitive and help us fight climate change and get to net zero. Look, there's so much more to say. I'm inclined to go on, but I've kept you too long. Let me close with this. What you've done here in Lorain shows what's possible. You've reclaimed your waterfront, cleaned your drinking water, restored wetlands, which will help protect against storms and flooding from extreme weather and the spring thaw, and set the stage for jobs and businesses of the future. You know, tomorrow would have been the birthday of Lorain, one of Lorain's most famous daughters, Toni Morrison. Nobel Prize winner, Pulitzer Prize winner. And I might add, my wife was an English teacher and professor in college. The First Lady's one of her favorite authors. I remember her going over to Princeton to interview Toni Morrison for a paper she was doing for one of her doctorates. Her doctorate, not one. She has a couple of masters, one doctorate. Toni Morrison is also the mother-in-law of the chair of my economic council, Council of Economic Advisors, Dr. Cecilia Rouse. Toni passed away a couple of years ago. The reason I mention her is not because of her relationships to the administration, but her words that she told us to live by. She once wrote, quote, "We got more yesterdays than anybody. We need some kind of tomorrow. We need some kind of tomorrow." Places like Lorain have a lot of proud yesterdays, Now they're going to have some brighter tomorrows, and because of all of you. Well, God bless you all. May God protect our troops. And the reason they tell me I've got to head out, I hadn't planned on going immediately, is because of weather going back to Washington. And there's a little thing going on in Europe right now. And so may God bless you all, as I said, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.